L'chaim, l'chaim to our last class. We made it this far. Lewis says the surviving members. But no, this is, listen, we're in it for the real deal. Listen, we could have done a Talmud class that just kind of skims the surface, makes you feel good, but if you really want to get a real idea, you gotta. It wouldn't be authentic Talmud class if it's not challenging and mentally, what's what I'm looking for? Exhausting. Yeah, that's the whole point. Well, you walk in and say, "Wow, that was an amazing time." Now I feel amazing. I'm ready to go about my day. No, it's like I got such a big headache. I don't know what I just did. You're saying, but it's bad sales, right? All right, guys. Well, here we are at the very last class of Decoding the Talmud. And that also means that we got a new course coming up. And I want to invite all of you to join us for our next course. Totally different pace, totally different beat. We're going to be doing a lot of history and a lot of really, really fascinating Jewish history and Jewish life. It's a whole different style course. I want to invite all of you to join that course. Colorful profiles. Starting, it's going to be 4 Wednesdays. It's not a 6-week course, it's a 4-week course. 4 weeks of May. Stay tuned. That course is about to go live. And check this out. That's the deal. Colorful profiles, short stories of extraordinary and unexpected characters from Jewish history. So meet the grandparents you never knew you had. Meet the stories that you've never heard before. And that is what's coming up. Okay. And with that, dear friends, what was that?
The music is a little Austin Powers.
Really? Yeah.
I was dancing in my chair.
Right, yeah. It's definitely got a bit of a groove there, yeah. All right, but here we are, the Talmud until today, which is, over the past 5 weeks, we've really learned a lot about the style of the Talmud, where the Talmud's coming from, what it's trying to do, how it records the oral tradition of Torah. But today we're going to be looking at the end of the Talmudic era up until today, and this is going to bring the course to a close. So, number one, let's take a look at our... open up your books to page 211, where we have a little bit of a timeline that summarizes a lot of ideas we spoke about until now, but as well brings us into the future. Not the future from today, the future from after the year 500. Where we're up to in the course, page 211. And what we see over here is the big year 500, which is more or less the end date of the Talmud. Which means that the Talmud as we have it right now is done just around the year 500. That's a very rounded out number, give or take a few decades. But by the year 500, approximately, the Talmud is done. It looks, not the pages don't look because the printing press was not around yet, but the text of the Talmud is complete as we have it today, and the Talmud does not change from that time and on. And then we have forever and ever from then, not too long ago, just by the year 500, the Talmud for the Jewish people, and this is what Judaism is built upon from then. Now, there's one question which has been coming up. One person kept this from the morning class. One person kept on asking me this question: why did the Talmud finish? Why did the Talmud finish? How did it finish? Which means, wouldn't it be cool? I'd love that. Right? Rabbi Levy from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, says, why can't I have a seat by the table? No? Why am I locked out of contributing to the Talmud? So we have to understand what made the Talmud end. Why did it end? We learned previously that there were 2 great sages. Their names were Rav Ashi and Ravina. And they were the ones that ultimately worked hard to bring together the entire teachings from all across Babylonia, organized in the Talmud, and then they did something which is basically they redacted it, they sealed it, and the Talmud right now is a closed book, right? Sent to press, no more changes to the text. That's it. Why did that happen? What made them feel that they have to do that? Why couldn't the conversation continue going? I don't know, another 100 years, another 1,000 years. And this is going to be the question that helps us understand not just why the Talmud ended, but gives us an understanding of what's the Talmud's role in Judaism and where we go post-Talmud. Because the real truth is, as much as Talmud ends, meaning the Talmud becomes a authoritative text, which there's no more changes happening to it. It's not a living text, it's over. But that's not the end of Jewish scholarship. In a certain way, it's only the beginning of it. So that's really the tension that we are going to be addressing tonight. Dear friends, let's jump in. I want to go back with some history. We've covered some of this history, but to really understand and appreciate what the Talmud is, the power that the Talmud has, we need to go back to the very, very beginning. About 3,300 and something years ago, Jews are standing in Mount Sinai, and God gives them the Torah, 5 books of Moses. But God tells the Jews, you're getting 5 books of Moses, but there's a whole nother layer to the Torah that's not written down, and that's called the oral tradition. The oral Torah. The oral Torah has both components that were given to Moses explicitly. So for example, it says in the Torah, you should shake on the holiday of Sukkot a lulav and an etrog. Well, what is a lulav? What is an etrog? That's oral tradition, right there, that's oral tradition. How would you know that the Hebrew word etrog means this specific kind of plant and fruit? Oh, oral tradition. God told that to Moses. But there's a lot of laws that God didn't tell Moses explicitly. And as we learned in lesson number 1, you remember this from 6 weeks ago? God gave Moses a toolbox of how to use the existing knowledge that we have in Torah and to apply it to any newly given situation. And in that way, God empowered Moses to create what we call Jewish courts. And Jewish courts are there that anytime there's any new development in the world, and anytime there's any new question in halacha, or a new what-if scenario, which this specific case was never addressed until now, they have the tools to address it. So for example, this is fascinating. I was just looking into this because this comes up, we're maybe going to be learning about this in a year from now, working on a course about Jewish responsa, like in the lab of the evolution of Jewish tradition. Very, very interesting concept for a course. In the 13th century, a new invention came out, which was like the iPhone of those times. Like the iPhone changed the world. This changed the world. This was like the cutting edge technology of the 13th century. It was called the astrolabe. You guys are familiar with this? You ever saw an astrolabe? All right, I knew Stuart's going to know about it. You know about an astrolabe? Yeah. Astrolabe is a wildly cool device, which I still don't really understand how it works. You don't either.
Is it like a sextant?
And
for
some
navigation?
other things.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically it's a multi-part tool. You have to understand how to put it together. And there's multiple layers of mapping out, number one, the sky, the North Star, so it helps you understand how to put the different coordinates, and it basically helps you tell the time. That was its prime function, but they say it could do hundreds of different things. Just with a few different dials and controls that you could play around with, you just simply using your own tools of, where are the planets, where are the stars, where am I, and you do that on this astrolabe, and a whole bunch of stuff that you could figure out how to map out on this astrolabe. So comes the 13th century, and if you're the cool kid on the block, you need an astrolabe. Like the kids today, what do they need? A new iPod? New iPod Touch? Okay, you're getting going for an astrolabe. But you know what's interesting? The astrolabe brought up a whole bunch of questions for the Jewish people. What would be some questions about an astrolabe? Lots of interesting things. Here's an interesting thing. The astrolabe was basically engraved metal with the structure of the solar system, planets. But there's a mitzvah, you're not allowed to make a graven image. You're not allowed to bow down to an idol. What's idols usually?
A human form?
Either human form or also celestial beings. The moon, the star, So 1 second, is a Jew allowed to own an astrolabe that all of a sudden has all these celestial body forms on there. Is this maybe getting into the territory of idolatry? We're not allowed to own such types of stuff. You know what the only problem is? If you open up the Torah, where are you going to find the laws of an astrolabe? Right? Doesn't exist. So it's not. There's no laws directly about an astrolabe. But the idea that God gave us everything and anything we'll ever need, it's in the Torah. You just have to use the principles. So we have record of it. That the rabbis in the 13th century, this was mainly in Spain. I don't think Europe was really dealing with such modern technology. They were still a bit primitive. But in the Muslim lands, this was a very big deal. Rabbis had to deal with this. There's also another thing. It helps you tell the time. You have to put it together. It's a whole configuration. Now, putting things together and building things is a bit of a no-no on Shabbos. Are you allowed to put together an astrolabe on Shabbos? So that's just two questions, out of maybe many questions that the astrolabe brings to the table that we don't have an answer to. But the real truth is the Talmud's full of this. All these what-if cases, it's not 100% clear what the answer would be in a more nuanced case. And the idea is that how do we know what the law is? The Torah tells us clearly, you got to go to the local court, and they're going to tell you. Now, the biggest power of development in halacha that moves Judaism forward is what's called the Sanhedrin, which is a Supreme Court in Jerusalem. This is the most important thing. It was a body of 71 justices, the greatest rabbis of Israel. Mordechai from the Purim story was a member of the Sanhedrin. Just FYI, gives a bit of an idea of the persona we're dealing with over here. And the Sanhedrin had the ultimate power to determine what is Jewish law for the entire people. Which means like this, just like in America, we have district courts and you have county, what are the different layers, right? A township court. So if you want a local court could rule things locally. But a local court, a state Supreme Court, it's for the state. Right? We can't determine what's going to be the law in Montana. That's for their state. Then you have a Supreme Court. This is for the entire land. So too the Sanhedrin had the power for the entire Jewish people. And ultimately, because they had that power, any ruling the Sanhedrin made becomes enforced as the Torah of the Jewish people from now on. So for example, Hanukkah became a Jewish holiday for all the Jewish people, for all of posterity. Why? Because the Sanhedrin ruled on it. And if they said Hanukkah is becoming our holiday, that's not just a local court giving an opinion. A local court makes the law only for that area under its jurisdiction. But when Judaism flows through the Sanhedrin, that determines what Judaism is. So whenever there's a new question, we don't know what to do, there's a sticky situation in Judaism, maybe the law never came up before. The Talmud tells us that one of the times when they came up with this tricky law was this year's schedule with Pesach. Pesach starts on Saturday night. But usually the day of Pesach is a very busy day. Not today, we don't have a holy temple, not these days. But in the times of the holy temple, you're bringing the Pesach offering. But it doesn't happen so often. It could be a good few years between one time that we have Pesach happening on a Saturday night. It's a big mess. It makes it a lot harder that Erev Pesach is Shabbos. Okay. The Talmud tells us the sages in Israel forgot exactly the laws about the sacrifices, what exactly to do. Hillel was the big savior that he had the record of from the earlier generations what to do in this type of situation. How's it going, Jim?
Doing well.
Welcome. You missed the joke.
They'll tell me later.
Just kidding, no joke today. Let's see, maybe if a good joke comes to me, we'll do a joke.
Can't remember.
What was that? Out. Yeah. But we may still get one. That's the good thing. The good news is you didn't miss it. Okay, we'll see. So the Sanhedrin is critical. If you don't have a Sanhedrin, you have no ultimate body of authority to help you understand what to do, which is a very, very big problem. Let's look at our timeline over here. The timeline is very, very important. Around the year 40 is before, you can also look in your books if that's easier. Around the year 40 of the Common Era, just about 2,000 years ago, the Sanhedrin stops acting as a body due to Roman persecution. Which that means that starting from the year 40, any question, any halachic question, is never coming to a conclusive answer. You could have a local rabbi giving you an opinion. guiding you. You could have a local community court guiding you. But ultimately, for a body like the Sanhedrin to give a decisive answer, this is Judaism, we don't have that. And that's why we have, between the year 40 and the year 200, a lot more conflict, not conflict, but differences of opinion amongst the sages. Before the year 40, there's no real room for arguments. Any arguments, you right away deal with it in the Sanhedrin. Boom, we have a unanimous opinion of what does Judaism say about this case. In the year 200, give or take, we have the Mishnah, the original record of the oral tradition. After the year 200, we have the Talmud, which goes until the year 500. Now, what's the Talmud doing? The Talmud, the power of the Talmud is that it has the power of the Sanhedrin. This is the way it works. The only way to replicate the power of the Sanhedrin is if you could do more or less what the Sanhedrin offered, which is a body that is representative of the entire Jewish people, and that all the Jewish people accept the authority of this body. How do you make that outside of the Sanhedrin? Well, you literally have to get a major representation of the sages of your time to be together in one room. And that body has to be recognized by all the Jewish people as having authority. And then that body could give authority using that power of these are the sages representing the whole Jewish people. The Talmud was a very unique time in Jewish history, where you had all the sages living in Babylonia, even the sages who lived in Israel, they were in complete communication. And all Jews more or less lived very centralized. The Jewish people gave, so to speak, the power to the sages to determine Jewish law. And because they were all in absolute contact, they were able to create not just a local, like one rabbi is giving an opinion, but a unanimous opinion of what is Judaism. Ravina and Ravashi, starting from the year 430, going till the year 500, were two sages who recognized that the trajectory of Jewish history is changing, and this specific circumstances, that we could have all the sages under one roof, figuratively, representing all the Jewish people, and that all the Jewish people accept the authority of this body, that's coming to an end. Let's read the way Maimonides describes what they were up against in text 2. Let's start doing some text over here. You ready?
Really?
Text 2, page 214, and Max, start us off over here. Text 2 from Maimonides.
Okay, post-Talmudic dispersion. After the era of Rav Ashi, the people of Israel grew increasingly dispersed throughout the world, reaching the furthest geographic extremes and the most remote islands. War became more prevalent and travel was impeded by armed forces. The study of Torah dwindled, and students no longer attended yeshivot in their thousands and myriads as before.
There you have it. This golden era of, on the one hand, we don't have a Sanhedrin. The Jews are in exile, but we have a thriving body that's representative of all the Jewish people and carries the authority for all the Jewish people. And all the Jewish people accept that authority. That was coming to an end. Now, how did Ravina and Ravashi know that that was coming to an end? I don't know. God sends the right people to do the right things at the right times by the right window of opportunity. But past the year 500, this type of scenario that was conducive for producing a text that not just is one rabbi's opinion or one community's opinion, but that's an opinion. This is what the Jewish people believe in. This was really the last opportunity that we have up until the modern age. Ravina and Ravashi created the text that was really the last text, almost the last text. I'll tell you the other text that came way after the Talmud that has this type of status to it. But they created in the last window of opportunity, a text that is not just made by Maimonides. Even Maimonides, as great as he was more recognized as being great after his passing. But in his lifetime, he was a rabbi where? In Spain. In the Mediterranean basin, as it's called. He was in Egypt. But if you're a Jew who's living in Ashkenaz, you're living in Germany, you're living in France, do you have anything to do with Maimonides? No. So if he gives an opinion, that's very, very nice. But he doesn't have any jurisdiction over half of the Jewish people, maybe even more than half the Jewish people. And you have Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir, the Baal Hagola in Ashkenaz, he has no connection with the Jews in Sfarad, the Jews in Spain, and the Jews in Africa. So the last time you have this that carries the absolute power that this is Judaism, because this is all the Jews and all the rabbis of the time are producing this text and putting their name behind it, the last time you have that is the Talmud. And because of that, the Talmud put together at a time that, again, I want to tell you the two ingredients. A body that is representative of all the Jewish people, and that all the Jewish people accept the power of this body, the authority of this body. The last time we had that was the Talmud. And because of that, the Talmud carries the power of the Sanhedrin, which means that all of Judaism passes through the Talmud. The stream of Judaism must pass through the Talmud. There is no getting around the Talmud. There's post-Talmud, there's no way you could say, well, the Talmud says this, I've got a different opinion. No. The same way you can't get around the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court. Now, if one private rabbi or one rabbi of a community says something, you could get around him. For example, let's say you're living back in the day in Krakow, Poland. So who's the chief rabbi of Krakow? You could have the greatest rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Isserlish. And he gives a ruling what to do in this type of situation. But you know what? In Warsaw, he's not the rabbi. And in Warsaw, it could be a different rabbi. And that rabbi does his own research and determines that the law is a little bit differently. So in Krakow, you follow the Krakow rabbi. And in Warsaw, you follow the Warsaw rabbi. Now, it's not that it's really two separate Judaisms. But sometimes even in halacha, there's place to interpret different things, just like a lawyer. Even if you're being 100% integral and with authenticity to American law, you can maybe focus more on this detail and say the law squeezes out this direction. And another lawyer says, no, I see it going that direction. And they're both legitimate. But you could get around either one of them. You don't have the ultimate authority. The Talmud carries ultimate authority. And that's its power. That's its power. Let's read the way Maimonides says this in text 1. Let's go back to text 1. Maimonides writes to us, and hopefully with my introduction I just gave to you now, we'll be able to understand this. What power the Talmud has, and what more limited power comes post-Talmud. Text number 1, Lewis, give us a read over here. Page 212.
Ravina and Rav Ashi and their colleagues constituted the end of the era of the sages who authoritatively transmitted the oral Torah, and who set in place ordinances, decrees, and customs that became accepted as normative practice by all the Jewish people. By contrast, any ordinance, decree, or custom instituted by any court that arose after the Talmud in any land, whether it was instituted for the inhabitants of that land or for an entire region, did not become accepted as normative by the entire Jewish people. Therefore, if one of the post-Talmudic scholars taught that in a specific case, the judgment ought to be a certain way, and then the later court subsequently determined that the earlier ruling was an inaccurate interpretation of the Talmud, we need not follow the earlier conclusion. We follow whichever ruling is more logically correct and in greater accordance with the Talmud, whether its author lived in an earlier or later generation. All decisions recorded in the Babylonian Talmud, however, are obligatory upon the entire Jewish people.
There you go. So that's the power of the Talmud. And the reason why the Talmud comes to an end is because past this time, we no more have the Jews in absolute communication. We can no longer make one body that represents the Jewish people, which would allow us to have this level of authority. Why? What's happening after the year 500? Lots of types of things. Max, help me out over here. I don't know. Islamic Revolution, the fall of the Roman Empire. Lots of stuff are happening in Babylonia, shifts of empires. And what
The Mongol conquest.
the Mongols,
That's later.
that's later. I'm not even so familiar with this whole era of history in general. My knowledge of history really starts kicking up after the year 1000. It's like the Dark Ages, right? Like no one knows what's flying over there.
The fall of Rome, the Dark Ages, the 1000 you start having the Crusades and everything.
Right, 1000 things are picking up a lot more. But the point is, this is a choppy time for the Jewish community, and communities start splitting. Initially, Jews are a lot more communication. Most Jews are either in Babylonia or they're in Israel. And you have other pockets, but there's a lot more centralized. All Jews are under one roof, so to speak. Now, all of a sudden, you're having Jews starting to really, the Jewish diaspora is really starting to take root, and in the sense that it's not centralized anymore. Slowly but surely, what happens over this time between the year 500 and the year 1000 is Jews stop relying as much on a central authoritative place like Babylon and start becoming a lot more independent, which is what we start having. You have a Jewish community of Sfard, you have the Jewish community of Ashkenaz. Every community is kind of getting their own rabbi and becoming a lot more locally independent, which basically creates an environment that can't create something with the power of the Talmud. So, that is what makes the Talmud a certain end date that they caught in when they still had the power to make something as authoritative and say, this is the text. And now all of Judaism flows through this text. This is not one rabbi or one group of rabbis making up a text which either you do accept or you don't accept. No. Everything flows through this. And that's been accepted. From the year 500, we have the Talmud. There's no way you could get around the Talmud. We build upon the Talmud, but we never go around the Talmud because of the force that it had. Okay. And this brings us to the way we know Judaism, which is basically post-Talmudic Judaism. Everything comes through Talmud. Anything you want to know, it has to come through the Talmud. So if you want to know what Jewish law is, it's in the Talmud. If you want to know what Jewish ethics are, it's in the Talmud. If it's not in the Talmud, I don't know, you got to find a good source for it, or else it's not Judaism. And if you disagree with the Talmud, that's not either Judaism. This is Judaism. It's over. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a closed book and just accept it with blind faith and goodbye. No. We build upon it. And believe me, we squeeze out every last drop of wisdom and depth. And whatever we could do to the Talmud, we do that. We build upon it. And the amount of Jewish books that were published post-Talmud is in the hundreds of thousands. It's mind-staggering. And in a certain way, nothing is not based in the Talmud. So the Talmud is unbelievably vast and rich, and this is all of Judaism. Okay, but here's the thing. I want to put yourselves in the shoes of you're a Jew living in the year 700, okay? You're right over here on the map. You got no Jewish books besides the 5 books of Moses and the Talmud. And let's say you're a Jew, you live, somewhere in Asia, you live in Yemen, you're far out there, you live somewhere in Africa, and you want to know, what is the law? So you can't Google. There aren't all these easy books and digests which make it easier. The only book you have is the Talmud. So you have a question such as, am I allowed to eat a late lunch on the eve of the Passover Seder? I'm having a Seder in 4 hours. Does that sound familiar? That question? Who's being it out? Okay, very good. Just testing you out to see if you were paying attention. Okay, right? You remember that question. Are you allowed to eat on the eve of Passover? You don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is. So where are you going to look? I got only one place. Look up in the Talmud. Okay. The problem is, the Talmud has zero organization. The best you have is, it says, this is a tractate about Passover. It's a pretty good start. But there's no index. This is not an index. Boom. All I got is just text. Lots of it. Where do you start? Where do you end? I don't even know where to look. Okay. So, unless you really know where everything is in the Talmud, on thousands of pages, you know where to find stuff, this is a very difficult thing to do. Let's say you find the page. You know it's on page 90-something, page 99. That's where it is. Open up to page 99. You got lots of other problems now. What are your problems now?
A or B.
First of all, lots of opinions.
Well, A and B, which is 99. 99.
Oh, not A and B. Well, you see,
That's two.
so you got the page. You got the page. Just reading Talmud, there's 10 different obstacles in trying to even get through the text of Talmud. Number one, as you'll see over here in the Talmud, and you also have this in your books. What page do you have in your books? Oh, I'll put it up here on the screen as well, but if you want to look at it on your books. Do we have it in the books? Yeah, okay, so you jump to page 228 to take a look over here. Okay, let's actually summarize this. The Talmud is the conclusions of the Talmud are binding. That's the power the Talmud has. Rulings issued after the Talmud's conclusion by one halachic authority are not binding on other halachic authorities. And the reason for this was because all of a sudden the Jewish community is dispersing as the Jewish people dispersed. The conclusions reached by one community no longer represented a universal conclusion of a universal consensus of world Jewry. And here we got the Talmudic page. Okay. So let me remind you, this is a big Talmudic page. It's very, very involved. Talmud is only the center column. Everything else is commentary that comes much later. We're going to talk about that. But the actual Talmud is this. Now, one of the...
So, for instance,
700, all we have is the center portion.
Exactly. Now, let's actually look. If you look towards the back of this, go to page 242. The back of the lesson. We have here some wonderful stuff over here. Go to page 244. This is from the year 750 of the Common Era. So just a few hundred years after the Talmud is an official text, we have the oldest extant Talmudic manuscript. Amazing. Found in the Cairo Geniza. Maybe one day we'll do a class about the Cairo Geniza. Cairo Geniza is amazing. Okay. Then we have 10th or 11th century, we have a manuscript from the Mishnah. 1342, the Munich manuscript. The oldest surviving copy of the entire Babylonian Talmud, handwritten, not printed. That's all handwriting. Now, as you're going to see, the Talmud does not look at the way we have it right now, right? It's just Talmudic text. We don't have any commentaries. Only in 1484, if you turn to the next page, we have what we call the daf. We have the look of the page, which has the Talmudic block in the middle with commentaries around it. So, and then that kind of, that shapes the look of Talmud from then and on. But Talmud itself is just this. Now, as you're going to see, I just want to point this out to you. The Talmud is written in a way that has zero, it's not out to try to help you read this. The moment you have the words Gemara that tells you that this is the Talmud, the Gemara now beginning, it's one long block of text, not a single paragraph break, not a single piece of punctuation, not even a single vowel. There's no vowels, which make it even, just even know what word this is itself a challenge. And this just goes on for pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. And you've got no clue what we're looking at. So, you could be a very well-meaning Jew, you're trying to look for the law, but what you're up against is a very, very difficult thing to look at. No punctuation, and also very cryptic. I want to walk through both of these with you. Just understanding the words is very difficult, and then even if you can make out the words, to understand the meaning and to know where to draw the bottom line, what's the ultimate bottom line, that's very, very difficult. Okay, here's an example of a statement without any vowels or any punctuation. What does this say?
Women without her man is nothing. Woman without her man is nothing.
Well, is there a comma or not?
Let's deal with punctuation. Let's deal with punctuation next.
Women without her, man is nothing.
Yeah,
Is this woman in the singular or woman in the plural?
Singular.
singular.
How do you know?
We don't know.
Well, reading the whole thing, you know. Because it's a singular. No, if it was
saying-
plural,
It
it'd be
is
there. It
nothing.
wouldn't be her. It wouldn't be her.
Who said it's her? Maybe it's our?
Them.
Then it wouldn't make sense.
I don't know. Who said this is a woman?
Woman without her
Man, men, mean. This doesn't have to be saying men. There's 10 other options of what this could be.
No, I would with punctuation.
Is this is, so, see? What word is this? Okay, this is nothing more like it. Okay, this is just a fun one-liner. Maybe not so fun. But, try doing this for a full page of text. And this is not just storytelling text. This is intricate legal analysis where even one small difference of a word. For example, how many words spell BRD? Just those 3 letters. If you had to add vowels, BRD, bread, board,
Bread,
bread,
bride,
bride,
No, yeah, right.
Yeah, bride would be there.
breed,
breed. There's like more than 30 words you can spell it. So imagine you have the Talmud, BRD,
Brain.
braid.
Brain, no.
No, that's an N.
D.
D, with a D.
Brain.
Okay, so this is, if we had vowels, woman without her man is nothing. Do you like this statement?
The women don't.
It needs
Wait
to
a minute. Without woman, man, is nothing.
1 second. You got
Ways to interpret it.
you got to know how to read it. You can either say, woman without her man, comma, is nothing. Or it can be like this. Woman, comma, without her, comma, man is nothing.
Right.
Which one is it? What was that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
It's totally different meanings. Now, it's fun to talk about this way, but this is what's happening in the Talmud. Just figuring out how to read one word, one line, is a challenge in itself. Where am I putting punctuation? Is this a question? Is this an answer? Is it a statement? To follow a very, very multi-step complex sugya and to understand what every single step is doing, even just figuring out what the punctuation, what's the flow of even the words over here, is a massive challenge in and of itself. I want to do this with you. We learned this sugya last week, but I want to give you a little bit of a taste of what the Talmud in the Ra would sound like. And even this is being pretty helpful because it's in English and the English is vowelization. But let's just look at the literal meaning of the words with no punctuation at all, and let's see what this looks like. Text number 7, we're jumping around a little bit over here. Page 229. So you got to go back now, page 229, text 7, and Jim, you're going to give us a read. 229. You lost your book? Or you don't have it tonight?
Don't have it tonight.
That's somewhere.
The raw Talmud. What is the case if that the employer said to them at 4, am I in the right place?
Yeah.
And he went and said to them at 3, what is the function of complaint he knew and accepted if the employer said to him at 3 and he went and said to them at 4, what is the case if he told them your wages are on me, he gives them from his own? I tried to read it without punctuation.
We're doing good over here, right? You understand
The
this?
period at the very end.
Yeah, just put the period at the end. You're good. All right, we're all on the same page right now, right?
There was no punctuation in Hebrew back then?
No. It could be it existed, but not in the Talmud.
Yeah, but why, if it existed, why wouldn't they put it in the Talmud?
I don't know. I'm saying this is high level study, you know. But this is good stuff over here, no?
Yeah, I can't argue with it.
You can't. This is challenging stuff over here. Now, by the way, do you want to have some fun trying to figure out how to punctuate this thing? Okay, so it opens up with what is. So what is that a question? Do you think that's a question, statement, answer?
I would say, what is the case?
So that sounds like a question.
Yeah. What is the case?
Now, okay, what is the case? Do you put the question mark right after the word case? Or do you continue reading the question? Is it what is the case if, or is it what is the case question mark?
It feels like
Is the word if the beginning of an answer? Or is the word if continuing the question?
it's like spelling out the facts, but it's like it
ambiguous.
should say, what is the ruling in the case that if?
Oh, so which one is it? Is it saying what is the case, and then if that is already the answer of what is the case? Or is if that the continuation of the question? We don't know. You see how much you have to crack your head over here? So, just the...
I've seen writing, I've seen like the English where it's like bold is the actual Talmud.
And the unbold is filling everything in.
Bold is
Yeah.
the,
Right, because you can't do a literal translation over here. A translator has to do something very creative, which is create a presentation that on the one hand does carry the meaning, but a literal translation of the Talmud is not working for us, obviously, right? Okay. So because of this, if you are a regular Jew, even a learned Jew, but you still don't know if you're allowed to eat on the eve of Passover, and you've already gotten past the hurdle of figuring out where it even discusses in the Talmud. I know we're on the page. Even that's a big deal. But even if you're on the page and you know that it's going to be spoken about somewhere on this page, just figuring out how to start getting through the sugya is a very big challenge, as you see over here. And it gets even better. What's actually happening in the sugya? The sugya is actually telling you what the law is going to be. Turn to page 216. Don't worry, I'm not going to walk you through this whole thing over here. Page 216. 216. We're jumping around over here because I don't want anybody to fall asleep. Right? Get yourself a coffee over here. Or a Diet Coke. We got Coke. Some caffeine. We got to get some caffeine over here. You want to know, am I allowed to eat right now? And what are you dealing with? Look at the 6 steps over here. We've got a problem. We've got a Mishnah. We don't know whose opinion. The Mishnah could be Rabbi Yossi. It could be Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says you're always allowed to eat. Rabbi Yehuda says you're never allowed to eat. Rabbi Huna's coming and giving solutions how the Mishnah can maybe fit with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Bubba is coming and saying maybe it's Rabbi Yossi. I still don't know what I'm supposed to be doing over here. Help me out of here. I'm lost in a whole full-page sugya, but I still don't know what the answer is. Because of this, the Talmud in and of itself is great for a very advanced scholar to understand and have the full source code of Judaism. And the answer is here. But if you're not an expert, practically knowing how to use this is extremely difficult. And because of that, we have post-Talmud the whole world of commentaries and books, and really all of Judaism that grows out of Talmud. And so much of it is either to, number one, clarify where the Talmud is going, which is what's the law, where are we going with this law, and keep on extrapolating that law as Jewish history marches on forward. So even the most modern day question, which maybe is such a high-tech, futuristic questions, like an astrolabe, that's pretty futuristic, no? No. But what's futuristic today? That's like, wow, I can't even know. How does Judaism have an opinion about this?
The quantum computer.
What's the question? We didn't do it in the back of a transported fetus, temporary death, a virgin giving birth, the flying tower. What is going on over here? You got here's a good one. Okay, which page is this? Maybe like page 204. Just an example over here.
204.
We're dancing around over here. Advances in the medical sciences have made the miraculous resurrection of the dead an almost everyday occurrence. During open heart surgery, for example, a cardiopulmonary bypass machine takes over the function of the heart and lungs, meaning that the person is technically, and perhaps also halachically, dead for many hours. This led one prominent posek, halachic authority, who underwent such a procedure himself to raise a fascinating halachic question. According to Torah law, the death of a husband or wife effectively ends the marriage, allowing the other spouse to marry someone else. So is a person who underwent such a procedure now required to remarry their spouse? Or not? Meaning, if you're considered still alive, then good, your marriage continues. But if you go through open heart surgery and your heart was not functioning for a few hours, all right, now.
Talmud say that the heart is the
I don't know. We don't know. Meaning, you just.
Your cup is still working.
I don't know. Which one is it? My lungs are not working. My heart's not working. Not just for 2 minutes, but for hours. What's called death?
Based on your cup.
I don't know. The body is not breathing. Let's say, the body is not breathing. The body is not breathing. A machine's breathing. Now. So you could say, well, you want Judaism to answer such questions? They didn't have these types of machines then. No one's asking. But no, people are asking these types of questions. The Talmud does give us the tools to answer these things. So, but the problem is that if you're going to look, I have a really, really futuristic science fiction question, and I want to find the answer in the Talmud. Good luck. Because there's no even direct topic to look at. You have to be very creative. Well, let's see, which areas does this touch upon, and then where is that found in the Talmud? So you have 15 steps of each one is challenging you again and again to even come to a ruling ultimately. So this led to the whole post-Talmud world, and I want to walk you through post-Talmud world. How are we doing with time? Okay. So here we go, dear friends. Right away, post-Talmud, you have no books. So if you have a question, you've only got one option. If you live, let's say, in Yemen, you don't really got much rabbis. Maybe you have some community rabbis, but you want a halachic answer to a question. So maybe your rabbi could deal with easy questions. Basically all questions was being sent from your community, wherever you lived, Africa, Yemen, Asia, and you are sending it to Babylonia. Post-Talmud, okay, we already lost the timeline. From the year 500 to the year 1000, the great rabbis, who are really the generation post-Talmud, living in Babylon, in those very same yeshivos, those very same buildings, very same communities that developed the Talmud. For those 500 years, the sages are called Geonim. Look on page 218. I'm telling you, practice those fingers. We're moving around a lot today. Page 218, Geonim. Geonim, or Gaon in the singular, literally means splendor or pride. These were the leaders of Babylon for the next 500 years, and they were the ones who carried the authority, not the same authority as the Talmud, but they were basically the big shots. You would ask them questions. So if you have a question in the year 500 after the publication of the Talmud, and you don't know what the answer is because you're just not smart enough, what could you do? And by the way, today you have books. Back then you dealt with manuscripts and scrolls. You know how hard it was to find things in the Talmud? I'm saying it's an act of brilliance. We don't even realize how brilliant Maimonides was, that he was, we'll look at Maimonides soon, but like, to master this amount of material, not just to memorize it, but to have such a deep grasp of it, and to understand how to take it and extract from it different, it was brilliant. The Rebbe said this, that the world of academia does not begin to appreciate how genius, absolutely genius, Jewish sages were. The Rebbe said that he personally knew dozens of Jews in pre-war Europe who were smarter than Einstein. Now, sounds like a little bit of an extreme statement to say, but the Rebbe was absolutely brilliant in his own right. The Rebbe said, I knew people who were like, to have this level of knowledge, and not just to memorize it, but a deep understanding and deep to know how to apply it. It's absolutely brilliant. The point is, to get back on topic, for the first few hundred years, all halachic questions are being sent to Babylonia, which is a big pain. You got to find the next merchant who's traveling through Babylonia, and can you stop by this rabbi, by the yeshiva, and drop off our letter? That takes a few weeks, and you have to hope the rabbi gets around to it, writes a response, somehow gets the letter sent back to you. All right, so you're not getting an answer in 24 hours. No UPS to overnight it over here. But big questions, this is what the first few hundred years, that either you have somebody local who could help you find the law in the Talmud. Most Jewish life was simply by memory. I do what my father did. I celebrated Passover every single year as a child. I celebrated every single year. That's how Judaism was mostly kept alive. But then sometimes there are questions of extreme cases. We don't know what to do in such an extreme case. It's not part of Jewish life that comes around every single year. Blowing shofar, we do that every single year. So I remember from year to year how to do it. And there are professionals in our community. They're the ones who blow the shofar. They know the laws. But they're asking questions. So just on page 219, we have a little bit of a sampling of some questions that we have from this first era post-Talmud. Questions called responsa from the Gaonic era, from the times of the Gaonim. So this is fascinating. The first question, we don't know where it comes from, but they're asking a rabbi in the 9th century, the 800s. There's a brand new custom to say Kol Nidrei and Yom Kippur, right? That's very interesting. Kol Nidrei is a post-Talmudic tradition. So a community, we don't know where, is writing to Rabbi Natrane Gaon, is the custom of reciting Kol Nidrei and Yom Kippur appropriate? We heard some Jewish communities say Kol Nidrei. Is this Judaism? Is this a thing? And what's the answer from this Gaonic rabbi? We have heard that this prayer is recited in other lands, but in Babylonia, it's not our custom. We don't say it in Babylonia. Fascinating. So we have a record, we have a paper trail here about Kol Nidrei, and the Jewish community is not sure what's the deal with Kol Nidrei. And then other questions are coming up. Is astrology authentic? Being asked by Rabbi Shura Gaon. The last one's very, very interesting. About the sounding of the shofar. The Talmud basically says there's 3 different sounds of the shofar. Nobody knows which sound is the proper sound. So Talmud tells us do all 3 sounds, which is indeed how we blow the shofar. There's one long one, the tkiya. Then you have the teruah, which is very short sounds. And then you have the shvarim, which is 3 longer but still shorter sounds, right? So Talmud says we don't know exactly which sound is the real sound that the Torah wants us to make, so do all 3. So they ask a question of the rabbi in Tunisia is asking Rabbi Hai Gaon, who's the very last generation of Gaonim, I don't understand. If Jews are blowing the shofar every single year, how in the world do you not know what it is you do? If you do it every year, you know what to do. It's easy to forget things that the last time you did it was 20 years ago. So Rabbi Hai Gaon explains that basically different communities, eventually each one started having their own one. So it was that we did it every single year. It's just fascinating. This is how it works. But the problem is, the Jewish community is slowly getting into more and more and more dispersal. The whole concept of writing to a rabbi in Babylonia is becoming more and more difficult. Can you imagine if we had to keep on writing letters to people in Babylonia? So eventually there were books, and the idea of books, which was a very, very big revolution, that we're going to make new books. It took a few hundred years for any Jew to say, I'm making a new book post-Talmud. Who are you to make new books? We already got the Talmud. But books to basically make it easier for Jewish communities and for Jews, especially those who are out of communication with Babylon, to DIY, study Talmud, and apply Talmud on your own. And as you'll see, it took time for these books to become more daring and more creative. The first book is called The Rif. The Rif is well, it's called The Rif. Really, he called it Sefer Halachot, the Book of Laws. Now, it's not a book of laws. I'll show you what it is in a second. Okay, so what we did was, number one, we have the responsa. The Gaonim in Babylon wrote answers to halachic questions asked by Jewish communities. That's the first phase post-Talmud. But then we're going to come to right now Halachic Digest, and the one we're going to be looking at, the most famous one, was written by a rabbi named Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, a 11th century great rabbi, lives in the 1000s, and he's living in North Africa. Okay? North Africa, maybe he's moving around a little bit, North Africa, Spain, but he's in that part of the world. He creates the Hilchot HaRif, Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi. Rif is basically his name. Rabbi Yitzchak, and then Alfasi, Fasi. It's called the Rif. Okay, that's how he goes by. And let's look at what he does. The Rif is actually printed in the Talmud. If you turn to the back, the Talmud actually ends. In this book of the Talmud, less than half of the book is the actual Talmud. Maybe only a quarter or a third of the actual book is the Talmud. Yeah, this may be a third. Talmud's done. Everything over here, 2/3 is commentary. The Rif is right here. Here you have it. It actually looks like the Talmud, but don't get confused. This is not the Talmud anymore, even though it looks identical. The center is the Rif. What does the Rif do? The Rif does something brilliant. The Rif does not make a creative book. He basically gives you the Talmud highly edited. And what the Rif does is something which is so simple and yet very powerful. He gives you the Talmud, but cuts out any of the conversation and any of the debates. And he brings you straight to the bottom line. So take a look. I want to show you what the Rif does. Take a look at page 222.
It's the Cliff Notes.
But Cliff Notes, it's not just the Cliff Notes. It's the bottom line notes. And any questions and answers and rebuttals and all out. Gone. So it's like a highly redacted, how do you call it, when the government things and everything is? Redacted. Highly redacted version of the Talmud. So take a look. We'll see over here what he does to our sugya that we've been learning. And we really learned this in lesson number 3. Text 4b on page 222. So first of all, we have the opening Mishnah. Let's read the Mishnah together. One must refrain from eating on the eve of Passover, from close to the time for reciting the Mincha prayers, until after darkness has fallen. And then comes along the Rif, and we have a whole big sugya over here. And what does the Rif do? As you'll see, he slashes almost everything out. Most of the sugya is gone. He does add in some words. The gray are words that he adds in creatively. So he does add some words selectively just to help give you a better sense of flow. But more or less he's following, number one, the words of the Talmud and the exact sequence of the Talmud. And what he gives you is a version of the Talmud that cuts everything out and only delivers to you the bottom line. Let's see what that looks like practically. Text 4a. Let's turn back a page. Page 220. And I'm going to read this. And you're having a question. Am I allowed to eat a meal on the afternoon before the Seder? Am I allowed to do that? Yes or no? If you look in the Talmud, you're stuck with a massive debate. If you could even find where it is, and if you could even understand how to read the Hebrew. Now, the Rif is not helping you find the place. The Rif is not either helping you with the Hebrew. He's not either helping you with punctuation. But he will help you that you're not dealing with a whole convoluted text. And this is what it reads. Let's read over here. Text 4a, I'm going to read this. Mishnah. One must refrain from eating on the eve of Passover, from close to the time for reciting the Mincha prayers until after darkness has fallen. That's the Mishnah. Gemara, we learned in the Braita. Here's the Braita. One should not eat on the eve of Shabbat or festivals from the time of Mincha and onward, so that one enters Shabbat or the festivals with an appetite. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you're never allowed to eat before a holiday or Shabbat meal. Oh, but conversely, Rabbi Yossi says that one may continue eating until it grows dark. Rabbi Yossi says you're always allowed to eat. Now, in the Talmud, we had a massive debate over here. But comes along the Rif, cuts out the whole debate, and he tells like this: the law follows the view of Rabbi Yossi. Why? Because there's a rule that the law favors Rabbi Yossi over his colleagues. Whenever Rabbi Yossi has an opinion, the Talmud always gives him the favoritism. The law always goes according to you. And our Mishnah regarding Passover Eve concurs with all views, because Rabbi Yossi will concede that eating is prohibited on the eve of Passover due to the obligation to eat matzah. Oh, so the law is like Rabbi Yossi. You're always allowed to eat before festive meals, and before Passover is the only exception. We're eating matzah, so don't eat. Oh, this is great. This is a mechaya, right? You read the Rif, you got a bottom line. He helps you see the bottom line right away, cuts out all the debates in middle, and the Rif is helping you a lot. This was a massive revolution that the Rif is giving you a curated version of the Talmud, which took a lot of chutzpah to do, no? But this made it a lot easier for people to study Talmud and find what they want to find. This was critical. Now, let's go back. We're jumping around here tonight. Let's go back to text number 3, and we'll see how important this was. We'll see how Maimonides describes how important this was and how difficult it was to understand Talmud. Elki, we're holding by you. Text number 3, page 217.
The challenge of Talmud study. The Talmud's manner of expression is extremely profound. Furthermore, it is composed in Aramaic, with some other languages thrown in as well. That vernacular was well understood by all the Jews of Babylonia during the era in which the Talmud was composed. In other locations, however, and even within Babylonia during the subsequent era of the Geonim, no one could understand this language without being taught.
There you have it. It was very difficult just to understand the Talmud. It's so cryptic. There's a language barrier. And it's so convoluted. The meandering Talmud, I don't know where to find anything. The Rif was a very important step in making it easier that if I'm a Jew living in Tunisia, I don't know any rabbis in Babylonia, how do I find the answers? The Rif is a critical guide. This was wonderful. Okay. But then comes along the next phase. And the next phase was championed by the one and only, the greatest, Maimonides. We love Maimonides. Okay, why do we love Maimonides? This is one of the reasons. Maimonides invents what's called a halachic code. And the Rambam, as he's known, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, lives about 100 years after the Rif. He has even more chutzpah. The Rif is still kind of really sticking close to the form, to the language, to the structure, to the organization of the Talmud, to even the exact wording of the Talmud, more or less. Maimonides is saying, no. Even the Rif, you can't, as we learned, do you remember this? We spoke about many laws of Shabbos are in Tractate Pesachim. How am I supposed to know that? Again, there's no index of the Talmud. How am I supposed to find anything? Laws of Hanukkah. Let's say you want to have a question, how do I light the menorah? Which tractate is that found in? Even if you have the Rif, there's no tractate Hanukkah. Go figure. So where do I find Hanukkah in the Talmud? Okay, so if you know, it's in Tractate Shabbos. How am I supposed to know that? And even in Tractate Shabbos, there's more than 100 pages of Tractate Shabbos. 100 A's and B's. So more than 200 pages. Where am I finding Hanukkah in Shabbos? So this is a wild goose chase. Yes, go ahead.
Once you say, it's in Shabbos, and you're looking it up, you don't know if it's also, your question is not also addressed in some other aspect, somewhere else.
Exactly, 100%, right? You could have, which is 100% true, the same issue, or even very close issues, could be in 2 totally different places, even in 2 separate tractates. So Maimonides is like, this is not good enough. We need to make something better for the Jews. And the Rambam does something which takes the Jewish world by storm. He innovated a style that is used till today, and he got a lot of flack for it. All right? The Rambam took a lot of heat for doing what he does. What does he do? Let's read this. You want to give us a read, Anna? Text 5, page 224, from Maimonides, telling us what he's about to do over here in his introduction to his magnum opus.
Therefore, I, Moshe, the son of Maimon of Spain, girded my
loins.
Lions. I relied upon the rock, blessed be he. I examined all this text and set out to compile the conclusions that can be extracted from all this text as to what is forbidden and what is permitted, what is ritually impure and what is ritually pure, and the rest of the Torah laws. I will present all the conclusions in clear language and a concise format so that the entire oral law will be easily accessible to everyone without questions or objections.
Okay. The Rambam says, let's start from scratch. The Rambam had the gift of having a very organized brain, highly organized. He says, if I want to make a set that records all of Judaism, forget about the Talmud. Talmud's the opposite of organized. How would you make the most intuitive organization of Judaism? Well, Judaism has so many different topics. Holidays, daily Jewish life, Shabbos, business law, spiritual law, the Holy Temple laws, lots of stuff going on over here. Laws of kings, laws of wars. How do you take hundreds of topics and organize them? So what he does is he makes 14 meta topics. These are the mega topics. Okay. In every single topic, there's subsections. Every single section is intuitive, has a flow, and everything belongs where it belongs. And there's chapters. Everything organized. Nothing is running all around the place. Highly organized presentation, and he does not follow the wording of the Talmud. He's not trying to be true to any of the structures of the Talmud. He's writing law in the most clear, concise way, and his goal is, I want to democratize Judaism. I want the least knowledgeable Jew, if you could just read Hebrew and understand basic Hebrew, you've got open access to Judaism. Let's read how he does it. Same law, am I allowed to eat on the eve of Passover? So we're going to look. You're going to be pulling out his book, Mishnah Torah, and he has a section called Zmanim. Zmanim in Hebrew, what is Zman in Hebrew? Time, seasons. So if you have a seasonal question, where do you think you're going to be finding it? Which book? In Seasons, wonderful. And you're going to look over there, and it's highly organized, goes through the Jewish year. And then you come to the laws of chametz and matzah. You see that's where it is? Boom, I know exactly where to look. It's in chapter 6. As you go through the chapters, you'll right away see what the topics are. Okay, chapter 6 is where I'm up to. Intuitively, this law is exactly where you'll expect it to be. In the Talmud, nothing is ever expected, right? Everything's backwards. But in Maimonides, everything is always clear-cut. Let's read what he says. Let's read what he says. Do you want to read? Text 6. Text 6, page 225. Want to give us a read?
It is forbidden to eat on the eve of Passover, from a little before the time for Mincha.
Mincha.
So that we arrive at the eating of matzah with an appetite. However, we may eat a small quantity of fruit or vegetables, as long as we do not eat enough to feel full. By contrast, on the eves of Shabbat or the other festivals, we may continue eating until dark.
How do you like that? What do you see over here? There's no names. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, I don't know these people. No names. No names.
Never met him.
Never met him. No names. No, okay, here's what the Mishnah says, here's what the Gemara says. None of that stuff. Just tell me the facts. Write it to me. He's clear, he's concise, organized. And by the way, he's adding here a detail we didn't learn about till now. What's he adding? Oh, he's telling you, you're allowed to eat snacks. Oh, just don't eat a whole meal, but yeah, snacks you could eat. How does he know that, by the way? The Talmud says it's about 10 pages after the sugya that we've been learning. How am I supposed to know that? So Maimonides goes and he does all the fishing around for you. He's like, yeah, don't worry, from 10 pages in the Talmud, I'm putting it back in its place. In some places, the Maimonides in one paragraph will be quoting, in the most seamless way, you'll never know it, 7 different pieces of Talmud from even different tractates. So he's an expert compiler with just absolute brilliance and clarity of what belongs where. One paragraph is actually combining 7 different pieces of the Talmud, and he's curating it for you in an unbelievable presentation. Now, when Maimonides came out, it was a work of art, brilliance, and a lot of rabbis were really mad at him. He's like, what did you just do to Judaism? We have a Talmud, we work hard to find the answers, and you're cheapening the whole thing. Who's ever going to learn Talmud again after this book? The Maimonides stood the test of time, that this was what had to happen. But it was a very controversial move. You see what he's doing over here. We have the Rambam, he called his work Mishnah Torah, which means second to the Torah. All you need is this. And it's practical, highly practical, straight to the point. It's independent, you don't need any other supporting books. It's organized by topic, it's clear and concise. It is so wonderful. Maimonides creates this new model of creating halachic codes. Now, I'm just giving you a few basic points in history, some of the major events of the development of post-Talmud, bringing Judaism clearer. But I want to point out to you one specific halachic code which changes everything and is the only other work that has the status of the Talmud. So this is very, very important. And around the year 500, there was a halachic code. In the 500s, 6th century, a book came out that took the Jewish world by storm, like no book has ever taken the Jewish world by storm. And it became known as the Shulchan Aruch, which literally means a set table, which means this is everything set table. There were two rabbis who did not know each other, and they never met each other. And they each had a brilliant idea independent of each other. One, his name was Rabbi Yosef Cairo. Rabbi Yosef Cairo lives in Israel. He's originally from Egypt. What was that? Tzfat, yes. Rabbi Yosef Cairo. And he has this brilliant idea to make an updated version of the Shulchan Aruch, which brings Jewish law up to date, any modern day question, all the issues that have been resolved, and anything that's not practical for Jewish life as it is today in the 1500s, don't even put it in the book. This is not going to be a book about knowledge. This is going to be a book about practical use. And Rabbi Yosef Cairo starts writing this book. Many hundreds of miles away in Krakow, Poland, a great rabbi, his name is Rabbi Moshe Isserlich, has the exact same brilliant idea and starts writing on his own book. Okay, two rabbis. One's the chief rabbi in the Ashkenazic world with the Ashkenazic tradition. One, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, with the Sephardic tradition. Rabbi Yosef Cairo completes his work before Rabbi Moshe Isserlich in Krakow. And all of a sudden one day, some guy says, I've got this great new book from this great rabbi in Israel. Look what he produced. And Rabbi Moshe Isserlich in Krakow discovers that this rabbi beat him to it. And he does something brilliant. He says, you know what? Forget about all my work, forget about that. He did a good job. Rabbi Yosef Cairo did a good job. He says, I'll republish his book with footnotes. He did an amazing job, but at the end of the day, it has the Sephardic community bend. I'll add footnotes to also supplement whatever he wrote with the Ashkenazic bend. And this collaboration between two men who didn't even plan to collaborate and never met each other created a book that was so authoritative. And no matter what tradition you're part of, either the Sephardic tradition or the Ashkenazic tradition, this is your book. And this is the only book post-Talmud that was ever fully embraced and accepted by the Jewish people. And because of that, it has the authority that the Talmud has, that all of Judaism passes through it. The Shulchan Aruch is the only book that has ever come since the Talmud that has become the new final word of Judaism. So right now, for practical Jewish law, you go through the Talmud, and you need to go through the Shulchan Aruch.
Does that supplant the Mishnah Torah?
Yeah, 100%. Mishnah Torah is an invaluable book and resource, but at the end of the day, if there's a disagreement, which there are many of them, that the Rambam says, I think the law is this, but the Shulchan Aruch says the law is that, you're following the Shulchan Aruch. Because the Rambam did not represent all the Jewish people, but the Shulchan Aruch does. Now, neither of these rabbis ever thought that their book is going to become this classic, which is part of the beauty. Like, did the Rambam know that he's going to be so world famous because of his works? I don't know. Maybe yeah, maybe not. It's always something which happens after history. The Talmud, they knew that this is going to be Judaism. So this is just one other point in the story. The Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, which is mainly authored by Rabbi Yosef Cairo and also Rabbi Moshe Isserlich, and as well other commentaries that really helped supplement it. And its rulings are considered absolutely binding law on the level of Talmud. This is the only other book that ever got that level. Okay. Whew. We got to do some more. All these stages that we just studied, that we just learned about, were works that helped you come to a final ruling and to live Judaism according to the law of the Talmud, which isn't easy if you just have the Talmud. So you have the Rif, which made it a lot easier because he gives you the digest of it, but even that's very difficult. Maimonides is really the one who breaks the model, creates a new model of real proper halachic codes. We have the Shulchan Aruch that really brought it to the modern era. Till today, we always go through the Shulchan Aruch. Everything is the Shulchan Aruch. The way how we refer traditionally to a Jew who is faithful to Torah, you call him a Shulchan Aruch Yid. A Jew of the Shulchan Aruch, that's it. I live my life by the Shulchan Aruch. That's Judaism, yes.
When you were studying to be a rabbi, did you still study the Talmud or just skip right to Shulchan Aruch?
So it's very, very helpful, unbelievably helpful. The Shulchan Aruch is giving you a final word. But if you want to understand the backstory of this law, where does it come from? What are the considerations that went into this law? You need to study the Talmud.
So you did.
So you do, yeah, 100%. But you could also, you don't need to. You could also learn the law independently. But if you're studying to be a rabbi and you really want to get a grasp of the law, you need to see the source code. You need to see where it's coming from. And only then do you really get a three-dimensional, deep grasp and understanding of this law and the application of the law. But you don't need to. You could learn Jewish law, just Jewish law. But if you supplement it by learning where it comes from in the Talmud, it's always a lot more rich. And the same thing the other way. If you're studying Talmud, you either go backwards or forwards. You can start with the Talmud. Today in the Talmud, I'll actually show this to you. There's a very neat resource here in the Talmud. It's on the top corner over here, this little column. It tells you where you could find the topics of the page discussed in the Rambam and in the Shulchan Aruch. So if you want to see how this page of Talmud comes alive in practical Judaism, you look right here on the page. It's a wonderful resource, and you can look it up. So either you first learn the law and then you go back and see where it is in the Talmud, or you study Talmud and you see the way it evolves later on throughout Jewish history. But at the end of the day, it's all going through the Talmud. But that is all about helping you get to the final law and how to apply the law. But then there's a whole other area of post-Talmudic commentaries, which is not about helping you get to the bottom line, but more about helping you understand the actual page of the Talmud. As we learned, forget about getting to a bottom line, to a law. Even just reading the text of Talmud is extremely, extremely difficult. The first one who comes in to really save us and help us understand the Talmud is 500 years after the Talmud is published. So for the first 500 years, you've got no help. You've got the text of the Talmud, no punctuation, no English translations, no nothing. Either you know how to do it or you don't know how to do it. Comes along the great, another one of the absolute greats of Jewish history, the one and only Rashi. Rashi wrote a commentary which is all about holding your hand, reading the text with you, and anytime that you just have no clue what's flying, Rashi says, okay, I'll fill you in. It's like literally a tour guide of the Talmud. Rashi wrote it having his students in mind. He had a yeshiva in France, and he wrote it for the 15-year-old. So 15-year-old, you're not that advanced, you're still pretty young, you just had your bar mitzvah 2 years ago, you're a bubbling teenager, you're committed, you're a bright boy, but you need a lot of help over here. It's like that, not too simple, but not too advanced. That's a sweet spot that Rashi's going for. Let's read again the text that we just read before, and let's see what Rashi does to us. Text 7, page 229, right? You remember this text? Jim, you read this for us, right? What is the case of that the employer said to them at 4, and he went and said to them at 3? What is the function of complaining new and accepted if the employer said to them? Right, well, what's flying over here, right? So, what is the case? What does Rashi come and say? Let's read text 8. Text 8. Rashi comes and he quotes for us the opening words of the Gemara. What is the case? And he says, what is the case that gives them a right to complain, but nothing more? You remember last week? The Mishnah said there could be a situation of a deception. It's a deception which gets you very mad, but you have no claim of liability. You can't sue in court, but you have a right to complain, which means you do have some real issue to bring up over here, but not enough of an issue to actually get any compensation for it. So the Gemara is asking, what is the case? In Hebrew, it's just two Hebrew words. Hechidami, which means, how is this? What do you mean, how is this? What are you asking? Right? So if somebody comes over to you and says, what? Well, what? Well, what? So the Talmud says, what is the case? Well, what's bothering you? What's on your mind? Please tell me. Talmud doesn't tell you what's on his mind. You understand what I'm talking about. Well, what's the case? So Rashi comes and tells you what's the issue over here. The question is, what's the case? It gives them right to complain, but nothing more. Meaning, now I understand what's bothering the Talmud. Also, Rashi is helping us know that this is the end of the question. What is the case? The next words, if that, that's already a proposal of an answer. Sometimes Rashi just tells you that. It says, It's a Hebrew word, bitmiyah, which means big question mark. Which means you read this as a question. Sometimes there's a statement in the Talmud, you don't know. Is the Talmud asking a question? Is it a statement? Is it an answer? Is it an observation? So Rashi will tell you, bitmiyah, this is a question. Which means read this as a question. Which really comes from, because the Talmud has no punctuation, the way you have to study Talmud, the Jewish people developed this, you sing the Talmud. You can't read the Talmud. Because there's no question marks, there's no answer, you have to get a sing-song to carry the words of the Talmud and give it a sense of structure. So there's a real sing-song in studying a piece of Talmud. You ever heard that before, right? Only the Jews know how to sing a text. It's like, if it's a question, there's even different kinds of questions. You have to know how to say the question.
We all have trouble deciphering lyrics. Imagine if they took out the vowels.
If they took out the
Took out the vowels.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to hear lyrics in songs and get it right. There's
So you have to make the song. You have to make the song.
right.
You say, so the Gemara answers, and then there's a question. Ask the Gemara. See, there's a tune. So while you're reading it, you got to sing. What was that?
Very pretty too.
It's very what?
Pretty.
Thank you. It's not my tune. Okay, that's Rashi. Rashi is always. Let me show you Rashi. Rashi is always going to be in the. So this is Rashi. He's always
Point to that again.
over here. Always the inside column. This is Rashi. Rashi gives you a few words from the Talmud, and then gives you. He's not looking to give you a lot of long commentary. He's just there to help you. His commentary could be one line. It could be 6 lines. If you need a lot more background information, he'll give you the background information. Sometimes the Talmud says, "Well, you know what? I want to bring in a piece from the other tractate," and you're like, "Well, I have no clue what just happened over here. I don't even know that other tractate." So Rashi will fill you in. Well, let me tell you a little bit of the principles of that other topic. Whatever you need to know, he's always there to help you out over here. Rashi is not on the right or the left side. He's always on the inside. So if it's called the recto and verso. If it's the recto, which is the right side of the page, he's going to be on the left side, the inside. If he's on the verso, left side, then he's on the right side of the page. The point is he's always on the inside. Want to close the door? Let's do that.
Less likely to get damaged.
Exactly.
Ooh.
That's exactly right. Rashi is critical. We can't survive without Rashi. I can't afford to get my Rashi lost. Now today, a book, you buy new books every 10 years. Back then, your manuscript of Talmud, your book of Talmud, you want it to last you for a few hundred years. Not for you to have, but that's the way it works. You don't. So the mites and the insects or even just from usage, and the mice, they nibble at the edges of the pages. But Rashi, so we put Rashi with a lot of layers of protection. We need Rashi. Okay. So Rashi was critical. Rashi opened up the world of studying Talmud. There's no question today, it's impossible. Nobody studies Talmud without Rashi. You need Rashi. Rashi is explanatory commentaries. Rashi is his name, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, Rabbi Shlomo, the son of Yitzchak, and he writes an authoritative guide to Talmud study. Now, it's actually interesting. There's 2 tractates of Talmud that have Rashi. In the middle of the tractate, all of a sudden it's actually printed in Rashi's commentary. Big bold word says, here Rashi passed away and didn't complete his work. So other people, his students, filled in. But none of them have the power of Rashi, which is short and sweet, such short words, but so concise. The other ones are either like just too much words. None of them have the power and the beauty of that Rashi captures. But other people filled in when Rashi didn't do it. Some tractates don't have Rashi at all. Could be he didn't get around to writing it. Or some say he did write it, but got lost to history. The way Rashi was written was little booklets. He had a yeshiva, and he wrote down this commentary, not on the page of the Talmud, but as booklets. And it was all handwritten, way before the printing press. So if you were in Rashi's yeshiva, Rashi would lend out his copy of his notes. And you would say, "Can I borrow it?" You would stay up a whole night and make your own booklet. And then somebody would borrow your booklet. It was all handwritten, unofficial manuscripts until it finally got printed in the Talmud. But Rashi is absolutely important. After Rashi, there came, and this was really Rashi's students. Rashi had a yeshiva, Tosfos. Rashi had students, and Rashi taught them Don't just read the Talmud. Don't just understand the Talmud, but think as critically as possible about the Talmud. In other words, give Talmud a taste of its own medicine. What does Talmud do to the Mishnah? Crack it open. Ask every question you can. Don't accept any assumption over here. And squeeze out and make sure this makes absolute sense. So after Rashi, and really it was led by his students, which really were his grandchildren. His grandchildren were the main ones who began a whole movement called the Tosafists. Tosfos means extra stuff, which means a next layer, an additional layer. Tosfos is very, very different. It's not looking to help explain to you what's happening over here. It's highly innovative commentary. Tosfos is challenging every piece of the Talmud that it can. How does it challenge? Sometimes you read a piece of Talmud and just there's some lurking question in your brain. Logically, something that doesn't fit well. They'll ask that question. Or it will be that 10 pages ago the Talmud says something there, and here it's saying something which if you really think about it, you got to think about it a lot. Also you'll realize, hey, they're not 100% consistent. And what they do is, any rough edge in the Talmud, the Tosfos is going to come and ask it and challenge it. And what they do is they create a web of connecting and combining different pieces of the Talmud and sharpening our understanding of the Talmud so much more by asking these questions. And the Tosfos is unbelievably involved. A piece of Tosfos, let me just show you over here. Here's Talmud, here's Rashi, here's Tosfos. A lot of material. See? Just one Tosfos over here. I'm just opening it to a random page. It begins on the top of the page, and it goes all the way till down there. All this is just one piece of Tosfos, which means they'll open up a question, they'll find something, a little something wrong here in the Talmud, and they'll develop it and ask. And sometimes you can have 10 layers of questions and answers, sub-questions, multiple until we could finally make the Talmud work. The Tosfos creates a lot of consistency in the larger world of the Talmud, roughening out every single rough edge. Yes?
Rashi is Ashkenaz.
Yes, this is Ashkenaz.
Right. Would a Talmud for Sephardic look different? Would it have the Rashi? Would it have the Tosafos?
There's only one Talmud. Now, it's actually interesting you bring this up. In Sfard, they were a lot more into doing what we spoke about until now, which is, what's the halacha? In Ashkenaz, they were a lot more into what we call the lumdus, which means the learning. I don't care what the final word is. I mean, we do care, but what we really want to do is the logic of the Talmud, the analysis of the Talmud. That's really what captured their imagination. So Sfardim went into just let's get to the bottom line, and they were developing works all about halacha. The Ashkenazim were like, no, okay, halacha is good, and of course we have halacha, but we really also want to really get into the head and into the mind and really have the full analysis of the beauty of the logic of the Talmud.
So how did we get there?
How do we get where?
Is what the
Tosfos?
you said one wanted the halacha and the other.
No. It was just cultural. It just ended up being that way. Now, because of that, there was a lot of spillage. If you were Sephardi and you wanted to find lumdus, you had to get the Ashkenazi books. So it was very interesting how just culturally each one provided something unique, and there was a lot of cross. It was okay, and this goes on forever. Post Talmud, post Tosafos. So Tosafos printed on the page. Lights go out. Is that a message? Get out of time. It's almost 9 o'clock. All right, that's good to know. But then you have commentaries upon commentaries. Thousands of people, thousands of great sages up until modern times that continue developing the ideas of the Talmud, and you see it's an endless stream. Okay, we don't have a lot of time, but I want to talk about a few last things over here. What we have been discovering today is the idea that on the one hand, the Torah and Torah law, and even all of Judaism, comes to a certain end date, which was really the year 500. This is Judaism. You cannot add or change or amend anything it says in the Talmud. So on the one hand, it feels like tradition comes to a standstill. There's no more, you can't change the law. This is the law, over. On the other hand, there's so much innovation that's happening post it. And Judaism really is a paradox. Usually innovation means out with the old, in with the new. Right? Innovation means the old thing is obsolete, defunct, no one needs it anymore. right? Kodak used to be a part of the Dow. What are they now? Not even on the stock market, right? Kodak. Well, it's a relic of the past. What? It's out of business. So, right, we innovate. Kodak is out. Now, who do we have? We have, right, and by the way, it just shows you, everything could go out of business. Google one day is going to go out of business. That's the way it's going to work. We all know that, which is an amazing thought. On the one hand, Judaism is marching forward. The level of innovation is unbelievable. Hundreds of thousands of volumes innovating Judaism, bringing it to the modern age. But at the same time, Judaism never really lets go of the past. How does that work? And it only works because this is the beauty of the Torah that God gave to us. God is timeless, and if it's God's Torah, that means that the Torah is also timeless. If the Talmud was only the wisdom of the great sages of Abaye and Rava and Ravashi and Ravina, okay, then they're humans, and humans are fallible, and humans are stuck in their times, and eventually, every single year that goes by, whatever a human said 5,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,500 years ago, is become more and more obsolete every single year that goes by. That's the way it works. But because it's divine wisdom, it has an infinite and timeless life, which makes this unbelievable phenomenon, which I don't think exists anywhere else besides Judaism. It's so old, and yet it's so timeless. Nothing in the future there's so much novelty still rooted in absolute tradition. This is the way the Midrash tells it to us. And I want to conclude with you at this point over here. Text 11, where are we holding? Stuart, give us a read. Text 11, page 231 from the Midrash.
Insights from Sinai. The insights that a veteran student will, in the future, say in front of his teacher were all given to Moshe at Har Sinai.
It's an amazing idea. Sinai happened 3,300 years ago. Comes along the sages of the Talmud, comes along Maimonides, comes along Rashi, comes along a rabbi, I don't know, today. Comes along, not forget about a rabbi, comes along one of us, and we study something, and we get a little bit of a new insight. What about this? And I think I could extrapolate from the Talmud something like this. And the Midrash says, first of all, that's good. You're innovating. And that innovation comes from Sinai. How does that work? If it's from Sinai, that means it's not new. If it's old. If it's new, that means it doesn't come from Sinai. It's both. It's really the paradox of Judaism. That Talmud study and innovation is a journey that never ends. It only advances. And there's a certain integrity and validity because it's the meaning of two powers. On the one hand, we have Sinai. We have the principles that God gave to us on Sinai. And we also have the Jewish mind, the creativity of the Jewish mind. So if you're going to read Torah, and you're going to be like, listen, these rabbis are a bunch of outdated, primitive individuals, misogynist, sexist, right? I don't know what. they're from 1,500 years ago, Babylonia, Mesopotamia. I'll make, they're out of date. We'll make a new Judaism. That means out with the old. That's not Judaism. Innovation in Judaism this is Judaism. And if it's God's wisdom, it absolutely is giving us guidance, practically, moral, values, everything for today. But we have to also innovate, to schlep that out, to bring that, to discover it. And there's so many different methods of the meeting of the minds creates this absolute validity. And as the Midrash says, it takes a veteran student. It takes a student who has authenticity, fidelity to the original. And then says, God gives us the mandate to innovate. And let's conclude with this thought, and I'll show you a video, if you guys want a little video. Text 12b, Debbie, let's read this. This is from the Rebbe. Text 12b.
The obligation to innovate. Every Jew has the obligation not only to study that which is already published in sacred books, but also to innovate.
Every Jew, not just a big scholar, a big rabbi, every single Jew. We have a mitzvah to study Torah, and the mitzvah to study Torah only really happens when we start getting new epiphanies while we're studying. We're not just absorbing, we are innovating, and that's part of the study. That's part of how it happens. Everybody has to do this. And really what the Rebbe is saying is, in other religions, the whole idea of studying and being smart and studying the source code of the religion was only for the clergy. That's the way it works. Every other religion, they didn't want it. We don't want the commoners knowing what it says because they wanted the clergy to have full control. In Judaism, it's the exact opposite. Every Jew has to study Torah. Every single Jew has to innovate. Now, we're not so smart, we're not so brilliant, so we don't have that much power to innovate. But you know what? Whatever you could. Do a little bit. Two closing texts over here, and then I want to show you the video. Text 10, a very powerful pep talk from the Mishnah, the Ethics of Our Fathers, going back text 10, page 231. You see it, 231?
I do.
There you go, Doc.
Text 10. It's all in the Talmud. Then Bagbag said, turn it over and turn it over again, for it contains everything. Look into it, grow gray and old over it, and do not budge from it, for you have no better portion than it.
Isn't that beautiful? This is it. This is our Judaism, and everything is here. We just need to sit there and learn it and devote ourselves to studying Judaism and to keep on pulling out of it all the greatness that's there. And one final note over here, one final thought, is one of the most important figures in the whole history of the Mishnah and the Talmud is a great sage named Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was absolutely pivotal in the storyline of Judaism, and he was one of the greatest sages who ever lived. The only thing was, Rabbi Akiva, the Talmud asks, where did Rabbi Akiva come from? Such a great man. And the truth is, he was an illiterate shepherd nobody. He was a riffraff, right? For the first 40 years of his life. He didn't even know to read Hebrew. Was never in Hebrew school. How did Rabbi Akiva become the great sage Rabbi Akiva? Max, give us a read. Text 14, page 238. Rabbi Akiva.
Late bloomer. How did Rabbi Akiva begin his journey to scholarship? It is told that he was 40 years old and had never studied in his life. But he was once standing at the mouth of a well and asked, "Who carved a hole in this stone over here?" The people there told him, "It was formed by the water that constantly drips into it, striking the same spot day after day." Rabbi Akiva told himself, if a substance so soft can carve its way through material so hard, then surely the words of Torah that are like iron can engrave themselves within my heart, which is mere flesh and blood. He immediately set out to start studying Torah. He went with his young son, and they sat down before the teachers of young children. He said to one, "Rabbi, teach me Torah." He then took hold of one end of the tablet, and his son took hold of the other end. The teacher wrote down Aleph and Bet for him, and he studied those two letters. He continued studying until he had mastered the entire Torah.
Isn't that such a beautiful story? So you can say, well, I never studied Talmud in a yeshiva. I never had the privilege to be a yeshiva bacher until studied as a teenager. Rabbi Akiva teaches us, this is our Judaism. Everything is there. We need to just study it and find it, and it's ours to study and to innovate in. I want to show you a video. This is very, very interesting and a little fun video. So this we'll conclude with this, and then I'll give you some final remarks. Okay, here we go.
Tradition and innovation are oxymorons. Tradition means preserving the past. Innovation demands change. But the Jewish nation excels at both, constantly generating fresh interpretations of traditional texts because the Torah's ancient guidelines allow for endless originality of thought. In recent times, the Lubavitcher Rebbe treated the Torah's tradition of creativity to an unprecedented innovation of its own.
אף על פי was פלפולי די רייסה ist הדבר הכי גודל, aber בנגיע zu drucken das und nefit sein, ist leih כל הרייסה ליטה לסק, jitel, es darf sein mehr nicht wie die, was haben auf drauf, Aira, Brur, als sollen sich damit echt vernehmen, beschasse geworden die Riedes Haderis, und Limud Hatera, Alpiklole Hatera, und Bedarke Hatera, und in Memese Ifanim, dafür haben Asirus Miyuchad, und Aidet Miyuchad, Vechulhu, der Farid Kedai, ab mir Edet sein und Misare sein, und die alle, was kann sein, als seine Scheiche zu Chidush und Teira.
The Rebbe handed the keys of innovation to whomever studies Torah. He campaigned for students of every age and stage of knowledge to seek and discover novel insights within all the classic works of the Jewish tradition, and to publicize those discoveries.
Gerade gebet manchen bekamen mit Kenntnis, dass die Yeshivas, was gibt mal Reis, Kefze, Aloche, Kefze, Chidush, ein paar der Rosh Yeshivas, viele von den älteren Wochen, haben das sicher Teil viel von den Wochen, wo der Walle seine Sachen nicht älter. Ich als eine Woche viel, als ein Erwachsener, man soll etwas noch anders sein, ist bekommt ein Geschichte.
Back in 1986, Rabbi Ruvi New was a student who hesitatingly heeded the Rebbe's call. He submitted what he thought was an original challenge to a text of Rashi's commentary on the Torah to his yeshiva's journal. His entry was then read by the Rebbe himself.
A question popped into my head, which I quickly suppressed. I thought that was something, for the big leaguers. One of the members of the editorial board said, put all of those calculations to the side. This is what the Rebbe wants, so just write it. My question is the first one published because it's the first Rashi of Bamidbar. And then I see on the bottom a note from the editor, Rabbi Galitsky. The question has been dealt with extensively by some of the classic commentaries on Rashi. The person who submitted the question did not take the time to do any research and look into Rashi's commentaries. So you talk about being thrown under the bus. Anyway, the next day it came to that point of the Farbrengen where the Rebbe was now going to talk about the Rashi. He said, the question was submitted about the first Rashi. I remember like shaking like a leaf. And then he says, even though the commentaries address this issue, in light of the fact that the person who submitted the question also asked a similar question from the beginning of Parshas Bahar, means that we therefore need to find a singular answer that can resolve the question both from the beginning of Bamidbar and also Bahar. The Rebbe then proceeded to give a beautiful explanation as to both Rashis. After the Farbrengen, the first person that I looked for was Rabbi Galitsky. He said no, with a big smile on his face. He said, no, the Rebbe is angenommen for dir. The Rebbe defended you.
Every Jew is encouraged to drink from the divine well springs of Torah wisdom. And every Jew is empowered to become a fountain of fresh Torah ideas.
You followed along that story there? You realize what he did? The editorial board just threw him right under the bus. It's harsher than what he says. They wrote, it is shocking that somebody submitted an entry without doing the research. And then the Rebbe starts talking about it. But the Rebbe said, no. He said, even though, basically what he did was he found that there's a question that touches upon two Rashis. So all of the commentaries only discuss this exact issue, but in each Rashi independently, in two different Parshiot. But because this person wrote it for both together, the Rebbe decided to give an answer that answers both questions at once. So in any case, but dear friends, the point is that we have a beautiful Talmud. We only have it here because all the generations that came before us worked hard to keep it alive, to keep its wisdom alive and to learn it. And this is our treasure. And just like Rabbi Akiva, we learned, when the water, you just do the drip nonstop. When there's real persistence and you put in the effort, there's going to be success. And dear friends, with that, we conclude this course. I want to thank you all for joining. And I hope this also gives you an inspiration. This is the most important thing. That this is our Torah. Try to find another step forward. How can I take the Torah that we have and what's going to be the book? If it's going to be the Talmud, that's a little bit advanced. But what is it going to be that we could make part and say, you know what, just like Rabbi Akiva said, I want to learn this. And he made this a real part of his life. What could be a piece of Torah that I could study and say, I want to know this. I want to keep the Torah alive. It's not about what's written in the books. The beauty of Torah is when it's alive in the Jewish mind and in the Jewish heart. And dear friends, with that we conclude. Looking forward to seeing you at our next big show in town, Colorful Profiles. And with that, have a wonderful evening. God bless you all. Thank you all so much for joining. There you go. Give yourself a round of applause.